guys, this is the Lament Configuration Horror Podcast. My name is Greg Knox, and I'm joined as always by someone who is to body counts what fat people are to early onset diabetes, my regular co-host Reoffend.
Hi Greg, so help me Satan, I've had a lot of coffee today.
Oh shit. So on that note, on our show today, as promised, we are discussing 3 brand new video nasties. So these are the 72 films found in Section 2 of the Video Recordings Act 1984. But first, and I know you motherfuckers all love it, Rhea, can you prepare our usual warning for the squeamish and the spoiler of, people who don't like spoilers?
Fair enough. I know I usually do the same one, but I felt like meandering off and doing a different one today just to spice things up a bit. So I've worded it slightly different. I hope you like it.
Wow, let's have a listen, see what you got for us.
Okay. Content advisory. This broadcast contains gore, realistic violence, and spoilers. Please listen responsibly.
There you go. You can't get any clearer than that, can you? So the 3 films that we're going to talk about today, they all have something in common. And as we do the show today, I want you to all try and guess what this thing is. So the first film that we're going to talk about today is Don't Go in the Woods, which is also known as Don't Go in the Woods Alone, and mysteriously The Forest 2. Which makes no sense. So this is directed by James Bryan, and it's another 80s slasher film, which we both love, absolutely. So Rhea, tell us what happens in Don't Go in the Woods.
Well, to summarise, a murderer kills tourists in the woods. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, basically. It doesn't get any simpler than that. So Rhea, what were your thoughts on Don't Go in the Woods?
It's terrible, awful acting. It's funny. I've made a shit ton of notes, and it's got a very high death count. So although it's a terrible film, it's actually quite amusing to watch. So I'm going to say that I enjoyed it just because it was ridiculous. What did you think?
Yeah, so I can't really say I enjoyed it. I was expecting it to be more bad good, sort of. I was expecting something along the lines of like Cannibal Terror, which we talked about right at the start of this Video Nasty series, in terms of like unintentional hilarity. Now, don't get me wrong, there is a lot of bad acting. Definitely a lot of bad acting, bad special effects, bad camera work. Really bad editing. This is another thing, like on the low budget scale of these video nasty, some of the editing in these films is absolutely fucking horrendous, I have to say.
Yeah, one thing I noted about this film is somebody who styled, or maybe the director of this film, really likes pink. There's a lot of pink clothing in this film. Did you notice that? What the hell? Like, there's so much pink in this film, I just couldn't even handle it. I'm like, why?
There's pink on guys too, which I didn't even realise was a thing in 1981, which is when this film came out. So
much I like on all the guys in this film. Yeah, it's just weird. Anyway.
Very, very weird. And yeah, this was, as I said, not really a very, very good film, which I've got to be honest, I actually had to watch this film twice because another issue I had with the film is so much happens that it's actually quite difficult to follow.
I agree. I had to keep kind of winding it back and making a note and then just seeing exactly what it was because, as you know, I'm the body count girl. And there's quite a high body count in this film, which is good, but it just felt like it went on forever. It was like plot after plot after plot after twist after twist, and it's just like none of it is really of substance. There's just lots of quantity.
Yeah, so there are 4 main characters, I guess, in a main group, but yes, the body count goes way, way, way beyond just those 4 characters. It's all these, because the film, I say, if we take the title as Don't Go in the Woods Alone, it's pretty fucking difficult to do that because these seem to be the busiest woods imaginable. There are all these people everywhere.
Ready to be bumped off, and they all seem to wear pink as well, so... well, the body count is rather high. I counted 14 for this film, which is usually a real treat for me. But like I say, I had to keep winding it back to check who died, how, and and where and with what. And by the end of it, I was like, oh, I've had enough now. That's enough deaths. 14 is like more than enough.
So as you said, 14 bodies to count in this film. So we better get on with it, shouldn't we?
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about here. So it starts with a girl that's running away, but she doesn't die. That's just how it's just straight in there with like sort of peril as soon as the film opens.
And weirdly, like this girl, so what I thought was quite funny is she seemed to be trying to swim in sort of ankle deep sort of water at one point, which is ridiculous. But also, she doesn't actually appear for the rest of the film. So I don't know, I assume she died, but we have no evidence of this. She might have got away for all we know and then just went on with her life, really.
Yeah,
but
maybe they should do a spin-off just about that girl so we get to find out, because this film is terribly inconsistent, as you might have guessed.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of characters that just appear and then disappear, either because they're killed or they just don't appear for the rest of the film, and this is one example of that.
Yeah, next we get, it focuses in on a guy dressed as kind of a Boy Scout, or alternatively looks like he's borrowed Pinocchio's wardrobe, with a little kind of pointy Robin Hood hat on, and like a sort of beige khaki shirt or something like that. And speaking of Pinocchio, the acting in this film is incredibly wooden. So... yeah, that's like, those are my thoughts at this point. I'm like, okay, he loses an arm and he's the first death in the film, and got no context on this character. It's just, he's just kind of there. So
yeah, so in the closing credits of the film, the character is listed as a bird watcher because he had binoculars, I guess. So, yep, that was the extent of the characterization that went into this guy. Very unconvincing arm being cut off, about as convincing as in Blood Feast with legs being cut off, I guess, or maybe even less convincing than that. I don't know.
Did you notice how kind of bright the fake blood was? You get that real bright paint kind of red. That really bugs me in like some films when the fake blood is just too much like paint. It's like, oh, come on.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of used to it, having watched many, many Italian sort of horror films, or many, many sort of horror films from like the 60s and 70s where like the blood was very bright red. Although, interestingly, if you've ever seen like blood when it's coming from an artery, it actually does have a very fluorescent sort of bright quality to it. So it's not that entirely sort of out of the ordinary, but still. Yeah, not that realistic. Definitely not realistic in this case.
No, it doesn't look realistic. I think it's as well because I'm used to dealing with theatrical blood for the performances that I do with the metal band that I occasionally go on stage with. It's just like there's so many different types of theatrical blood, and none of them are that colour. So yeah, there is that. Next, they go on. They keep mentioning Peter all the damn time. It gets incredibly grating.
Yeah, he was the only character whose name I knew for most of the film. Now, very weird, this guy. So, as we're going to probably talk about later on in the film, his character makes a lot of stupid decisions throughout this film, but they're not really punished. But what I found kind of weird to start off with is, was he supposed to be gay? Because he had a very, very effeminate sort of voice. And also, he had a weird accent that I couldn't really place. It's like, at points, it's like, is he American? Is he supposed to be South African? Like...
He's like the final guy with the pink shirt that gets really strategically ripped at the end, yeah?
He goes without his shirt for a lot of the film,
I don't think he's supposed to be gay. I think he's supposed to be the heartthrob, but I completely understand where you're coming from, because it's incredibly confusing.
Like a lot of this film.
But like one of the first lines in the film about him, delivered by one of the other actors, or I think it's one of the actresses, she's like, "Peter, we were worried." Just really wooden, and it's like, oh come on! If you're worried, you'd just be like, put a bit more into it. It's like, "Peter, we were worried." It's like, oh my god.
Yeah, although interestingly, I don't know if that's just bad dubbing, or if that's just the acting was just that horrendous, because I noticed like the dubbing in this film, as you would expect of a film of this sort of low budget quality, is shit, really, for lack of a better word.
Totally. I've written down a couple more great examples of robotic lines. One of my favourites. It smells like something died. Which is supposed to be funny, but it's just delivered so badly. It's like, oh, God, it's so annoying. And then there's another one where they sort of skip out into this, into this kind of woodland area, but it's more like mountains. In fact, they're talking about it being a marsh, but it's very picturesque, like something out of The Sound of Music. And they sort of come skipping out, and then one of them goes, well, if it all looks like this, then it sounds great. I was just like, oh, God. The entire cast are just like that as well. Terrible.
I mean, I loved when the film moved to, like, the police station. It kind of brought back memories of Frozen Scream. Like, so if all you people had a lobotomy, like, or are you all stoned right now? Because it's like that sort of level of, hello, you will have to take a seat. Like, just sort of... Like, because you must, I mean, you're an actress. I mean, surely you have to deliberately deliver dialogue that's stilted and wooden. Like, people don't talk like that in real life. They talk with some level of emotion. So it does kind of make me wonder if these people are deliberately directed to give that kind of stilted delivery.
I don't think it's deliberate. I think it's just an experience. Like, they're just doing it on the cheap, and it's just really terrible. The only thing that I can think is that they've not learned the lines, and they're just concentrating on getting the words right. And all they're thinking is, if I get the words right, then I've done it. That's the only way I can explain it. But there's no excuse. Like, everybody knows that doesn't, like, convince people of a real conversation. So the only thing I can think is that these are just people that have never done anything like that before. In which case, why get them to do your film, to work on your film? Oh, it's baffling. There's another one where it's like, it's that mountain shot again, and they're going, this is where I want to live. I was just like, well, if you really wanted to live there, would you say it like that? You wouldn't, would you?
No, probably not.
Yeah, and did you notice that there's a lot of, like, fake laughter when they were frolicking about in the water? So they were, like, splashing each other, like, we're having so much fun, we're being so playful, and splashing each other with water because it's all summer, and they're like, ho, 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 just, like, this fake laughter while they splash each other. And then what's even weirder is, like, kind of in the background, there's somebody that's about to be killed and they've not noticed because they're having so much fun splashing each other.
Yeah, that part, I mean, that's the next sort of deaths in the film. But like, I thought that was absolutely ridiculous. Like, you've got this guy who's just fallen off a cliff, basically, to his death, and they don't notice. Like, how can you not notice? You're right there.
Because they're having so much fun frolicking in the water.
Splashing each other like kids. It's
but like,
Jesus Christ.
Like you say, it's about ankle deep as well, so it's incredibly difficult for them to splash. So they're kind of stooping over really far and trying to sort of keep this fake laughter up, but it's just so stilted. But as you say, that's death number 2, our guy down at the beach. He's called Dale, I picked up on that. And he was wearing a pink shirt and a pink beret, which is like... Nobody wears a pink beret. Who wears that? Apparently this guy.
Dale, apparently.
Yeah, Dale. And who I assumed was his wife, who's in a matching pink dress, and she then gets dragged away, because he gets strangled, and then he, like, falls to his death, and next to the frolicking, laughing water splashers. And then... I thought it was his wife, but you said you've looked on the credits and it's his mother, isn't it? So
in the credits, it's actually his mother, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, it could be his mother, but the characters are only there for a minute just to be killed. So I think any attempt at characterization is pretty worthless at this point. Yeah. So after Dale and his mum get killed, we're then introduced to the policeman, and really the impression I got throughout the whole film is these policemen make the policeman in Last House on the Left look competent. Really.
Yeah. Well, also, they seem to have got these kind of stud-looking, like, police, like sheriffs or assistant policemen, like young guys who are supposed to be like the good-looking studs of the movie, and one of them looks like Napoleon Dynamite was based on him.
Oh yes,
that guy.
Yeah.
That guy.
I know what you mean.
It's so hilarious. He's like a blonde guy, like short curly blonde hair, blonde moustache with like these kind of big sort of late 70s, 80s glasses. Those kind of like wide framed ones, like gold, quite sort of, I guess, disco looking. And yeah, he just looks like Napoleon Dynamite, but obviously way before the era of Napoleon Dynamite. It's uncanny. So there's that. So I think they're supposed to be the eye candy of the film. Like, that's how I feel that it's kind of portrayed. So they've really focused on the guys in this film, and if you find Napoleon Dynamite attractive, then that's great, but
Wow.
not necessarily the rest of it. So,
and then after that, we get newlyweds in a van.
oh my god,
They have amazing names. So the woman's name, although it's not said, again, going by the credits, so the woman's name is Cherry, and the husband's name, as she so eloquently puts it, it's Dick.
Yeah.
So, and I liked Dick for the simple reason, although he's not in the film very long, whoever wrote this film obviously was a wrestling fan, because he said in the style of WWE Hall of Famer Classy Freddie Blassie, he calls the killer a pencil neck geek.
Oh, wow, awesome. I didn't know that.
So Dick doesn't survive for very long. He gets... I don't know how he dies. He basically gets his head shoved into the side of the van, I guess, and he's covered in that really fake-looking blood that we talked about earlier. And then Cherry gets killed in a pretty over-the-top, hilarious way, which is actually kind of a theme for this show, where people die in vans.
Oh my god, yeah, that escalates quickly, doesn't it? She sees his bloody face at the window. The next thing you know, the caravan's rolled down the hill, and then it just blows up and bursts into flames.
Although it doesn't explode like an A-bomb has gone off inside it, like the van in our next film that we're going to talk about. But,
yeah.
So
yeah, it was a bit of a harsh death. That is death number 5.
Yeah.
So Dick and Cherry, 4 and 5.
Yes, and then I've noted that we've got some more atrocious editing. It's kind of editing that made me think Bruno Mattei had edited this film, because it's lots of sort of scenes that just sort of end out of nowhere and just quick cuts. One of the issues that I have with this film, amongst many others, is the pacing of the film. So you'll have these scenes where too much basically happens in too short a period of time, and there's no room to let the characters develop. You know, they may as well not even be in the film, a lot of them. And then you'll have scenes near the end where it suddenly gets really, really, really slow. Like
I say, that scene with the caravan, it just escalates really quickly. It's like, yeah, she just gets killed, it rolls down the hill, that's it, boom, explodes. Boom. You're like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah, and it's interesting, like, so we've got our 4 main characters. Nothing really happens sort of to do with them at this point. It's just random people in the woods getting killed. Speaking of which, we have our 6th death, which is a woman who is painting.
Oh, this scene's amazing. I couldn't stop laughing at this. I could not stop laughing. So good.
Well, it's a very over-the-top death, really, in my opinion.
Yeah, with lots of bright red blood again. Actually, at this point, I thought I'd figured out who the killer was. I thought that I saw the artist, as we're going to call this person, who's like painting the canvas, sort of painting the scenery, stood in the woods. And then this kind of hand comes out of nowhere with a blade. It's a machete blade. This is like one of the common themes throughout the film of what the killer is doing. But at this point, you don't know who the killer is. But I thought that I saw a bear paw. So I thought it was like a really clever bear that was going around with a machete, killing people. As well, because Dick was saying that he wasn't scared of anything on 2 feet. I just thought, maybe it's like some kind of bear or some kind of bear man. So this kind of furry hand flies out with a machete, goes through the canvas and kills this artist who's peacefully painting. And yeah, it's just really like the noises that the person's making while they're being stabbed are really unrealistic for like actually being stabbed to death. So it's all a bit kind of tepid, the way that they're acting. So it's just funny, really. It's like, they don't sound like they're in pain, so you can't take it seriously.
No, but what I found quite funny is that she's painting this picture whilst wearing sunglasses.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to do that, would you?
Which is like, that someone's not thought this through very clearly. And also she has a little girl who then I assume gets taken away by
Yeah.
our wild man, who doesn't really have a name. In the film, the police refer to him as a wild man, so that's what I'm going to refer to him as in this review.
Yeah, I noted him down as the savage because when I saw him, I just thought, okay, it's a savage. It's not a bear man, and it's not a clever bear. So,
Bear savage man.
bear savage man. He's got like kind of fur cuffs on, like you would do if you'd skinned a few bears and then appropriated the fur as your clothing. That's why it looked like a clever bear paw that darted out from nowhere with a machete.
Absolutely. And then after that...
well, after our artist, I've got death number 7, girl in a sleeping bag. She gets tied up in the tree.
Well, there's the girl and there's another guy as well. So you get 2 people who are killed at once. So because it's a slasher film, there's a black guy and he dies straight away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then they're kind of hoisted up in this tree in this sleeping bag, and they're getting like big bricks thrown at them and all sorts.
Yeah, it's filmed in a way that it's not really clear what's happening. I mean, if you're watching a slasher film and you got someone being killed in a sleeping bag and it's not Friday the 13th Part 7, it's probably going to be a bit shit. And this is no exception.
Yep, so 7 and 8, those 2. And then number 9, there's like a fishing rod guy who gets a trap to the face.
Yeah, so once again, a random character, and he's identified in the credits as a fisherman. As you said, and he gets killed in a pretty savage way. I would probably say this is either the best death in the film, or there's another one a bit later on, which is quite brutal as well. But he gets, in effect, 2 massive blows, which kill him.
Yeah, I mean, I quite like this death, but I've definitely got a favourite one, and it's not this one, so we'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, he gets this bear trap to the face, which is pretty extreme. Comes out of nowhere, just swings towards his face, hits him dead on. Then you see our savage running around, and the next one, so that was death number 9, so death number 10, so I'm not sure what the character's called actually, but he's the one that's talking about call me your uncle or something like that.
Yeah, so this is Craig that we're talking about here. Okay. So he's one of the main characters. He's one of the guys at the start of the films who actually, he doesn't say don't go in the woods. He's saying never go in the woods alone.
Yeah.
So he's giving all the advice to all the other characters, and he plays a bit of a prank on one of the girls where he kind of hangs up her sleeping bag as revenge for something that she did earlier, just as a bit of a joke. Mm-hmm. But then he gets killed in what I thought was the worst death in the film, because it doesn't make any sense and it looked really shit, because the wild man was far too far away from Craig to do the things that he was supposed to have done. It just looked really fake and shit, basically.
Yeah, it all happens a bit quick. He kind of gets pulled up into the tree, stabbed, and his arm cut off is what I've noted down. Was a bit nonplussed by this part. By this part of the film, I'm like, wow, there's such a lot that's happened. I was kind of like, there's just too much going on. How much longer is this going to go on for? I'm running out of space in my notebook here.
Because, as you said, there are 10 deaths at this point. The film's not even probably halfway through at this point. It's just a ridiculous number of deaths. Yeah. So having a high body count is not necessarily a guarantee that a film will be exciting to watch.
Yeah, quality not quantity. That's what I would say. So yeah, so that was okay death, not amazing to watch. Then we've got the savage is still running around then after that, and one of the guys, he accidentally stabs a random person who sort of enters the scene, and then he's apologising profusely for killing this person. Which is
absolutely hilarious. So there was actually a scene before that where one of the girls, who's called Ingrid, nearly kills Peter with a rock, which is again absolutely hilarious. That she almost did it, but then Peter then kills this poor guy by spearing him through his guts, basically, and he goes, I'm sorry. It's like, you just fucking killed someone. It's like, it's too late now saying you're sorry. It was just so ridiculous.
He's just going to stick a plaster over it and send them home. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he'll be fine. Yeah, just exactly. Just put a Band-Aid on it and it'll be all right. Absolutely.
Yeah, of course. Again, with the wooden acting, yeah. The next one is, so they eventually find this savage's little house in the woods. And so one of the girls goes in there, and she gets killed in the house with a blade. Again, this machete that the wild man is running around with. So she dies in the house due to that. She's death number 12. Clocking up those bodies.
Exactly, yeah, clocking up the death count. And then we had what I believe is your favourite death in the whole film.
This is my favourite. There's just like a random guy in a wheelchair at the top of a hill, like unexplained. He's obviously just on a bit of a trip out into the woods in your wheelchair. As you would, I'm sure you'd need like smooth terrain to operate a wheelchair, but nope, he's out in the middle of the woods.
And he's by himself as well, which makes it even less sense, because it's like this poor guy in a wheelchair, and they play this up for comedy because they use this really like comedic score, which kind of sounded like the score from The Greasy Strangler, I thought, anyway, but that's just my opinion. It was just like boop-be-dip-be-dip-be-dip, sort of that kind of score, like playing this poor guy who's struggling to get his wheelchair up this sort of rocky terrain, and he's just like, oh, look at this idiot.
Yeah, Greasy Strangler, by the way. Highly recommend that film. I love it. But anyway, the wheelchair's at the top of the hill, and then this machete just flies up there and, like, beheads him. So suddenly it's just like this wheelchair beheading out of nowhere. And then that's it then. Moves on to the next scene, the next shot. And it's just like, it is really funny. It is my favourite death in the whole film, but it's just completely, like, random. And
all of a sudden it's dark as well, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, that is funny. So wheelchair beheading is my favourite one, and that's death number 13. My second favourite is the artist, because that was ridiculous and completely unbelievable as well. Like, just completely like unrealistic. So both of those are pure comedy gold. And then our final death is when the savage gets discovered. So, we're bringing the film to a close there, but that's death number 14. So it's quite a high body count.
Yeah, so you got more kind of evidence of the police being really shit, basically, they're just being really stupid. And what happens is as well, like the doctor has this really great idea. So you've got Peter, who's left the hospital and has gone on the run by himself. And she's like, let's bring the girl with us as well. That's a great idea, isn't it? So she's managed to get out of this alive, and she's probably quite traumatized. But no, let's bring her back as well. And then she escapes because she's also an idiot. But she also survives because she, I guess, is supposed to be the final girl. So her and Peter are like the final two who are left. And yeah, as you said, they kill the wild man. They basically beat the absolute shit out of him, pretty much.
Yeah.
Although not all that convincingly, I have to say. It looked like they were tapping him, really. It didn't look that realistic, but, hey, realism is not to be expected in a film like this, so...
Yeah. Oh, I've got noted down here for the wheelchair beheading that guy in the wheelchair. Guess what colour he's wearing?
Is it pink, by any chance?
He's wearing pink! I know, like, I've just checked the date of this film, by the way, because I usually mention that. It's 1981, so... I guess it was the in colour, but really? There's so much pink in this film.
Very much so. Yeah, 1981, height of slasher film. This not really a great example. I doubt this really made a lot of money at the time. I'm guessing they thought, well, Friday the 13th, that made a lot of money. Let's have a go. And they made this instead.
I also noted down, before the savage gets killed, there's a lot of, towards the end as it reaches the climax, there's a lot of these fake savage gurs. So he's like, arr, 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 as he's running around.
Yeah, it's very Scooby-Doo, isn't it?
Yeah, very forced. So, moral of the story is don't go into the woods, or don't go into the woods alone. But the couple at the end, and the two final people, they find the savage and, just like tear into him. Everybody else turns up and they're just like, whoa, look what you've turned into because you're killing him in the way he's been killing throughout the film. And you think they're going to be arrested or something like that. But then everything's just fine and they're like, oh yeah, we see why you've done that. And then everyone just relaxes. So it's like, it does kind of reach a peak quite well, but it's a bit of a lame sort of ending. What did you think?
We've seen worse. Let's put it that way. At least it wasn't a dream this time. But it's I don't know. I thought the ending was alright. I was just happy the film was over, to be honest. Although what we did have is a rip-off of the song Teddy Bear's Picnic, which I thought was like, okay, this is a bit weird, where they've changed the lyrics.
Yeah, I loved that. I loved it. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was so funny.
Are
Can
you
we?
sure?
Can we obtain that music, please? I would like that music for our show. Thank you.
Well, stay tuned. So we come to the key part of the review. So as we discussed, quite a high body count. There's 14 deaths. Is it a video nasty though?
No, it's not video nasty. It's too funny.
No, I agree. I'm not sure how this made the list or why, because anyone who, if within about 2 minutes, you'll know what kind of film it is. And yeah, again, it's not even really all that gory, and the gore is like, you know, that kind of blood feast style, really fake looking gore, and it's just like, yeah, and there's no nudity at all or anything like that. So yep, not quite sure what the BBFC were thinking with this one, but hey, never mind. Their judgment has never been all that great when it comes to this sort of thing, so, you know.
Yeah, it was. I quite enjoyed reviewing it. Like, there's a lot of material in there to make notes about. But overall, probably won't be watching it a second time. Although you did, Greg. You were extremely keen.
That's because it didn't make any fucking sense the first time I watched it.
I bet you've added this to your list of DVDs to buy, haven't you? Yeah.
Oh, God.
It's that good.
Interestingly enough, speaking of that, so I agree, not a video nasty. The director has tried to sort of claim that, oh no, the humour in this is intentional. It's like, oh, come on now. Really? It really clearly is not meant to be intentional whatsoever. But if you are not put off by our review and, you know, quite like watching shit films, then this film is actually available on DVD and Blu-ray, believe it or not, from 88 Films as part of their slasher collection. So, yep, if you live in the UK and you want to watch a really bad slasher film, then by all means, that's how to do it legitimately. So, yeah, although probably won't be part of my collection, although I did recently buy Island of Death, so quite happy about that.
Yeah, worth a buy. You had to get that one, really, didn't you? It was like one of our favourite reviews so far, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So that's episode 7. For those of you who missed it. So that was our first film. So the second film that we're going to talk about, and again, you might be able to notice a theme with this. This is called "Don't Go Near the Park." I don't know why it doesn't say "don't go in the park." It's just not even go in. It's just "don't go near the park." So this is, to put it mildly, it might be a little bit of a genre hybrid within the horror genre. However, that just might be because the film is really confusing and doesn't make a lot of sense. Ria, can you please attempt to describe the events of "Don't Go Near the Park"?
Yes, I'll attempt it. It's a 1979 film, and the summary is runaways are attacked by evil beings from the far past.
Well, there you go. Short and sweet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at my notes because Greg and I always watch these films and I just sit and write about them and, study all the details and make lots of notes. And capital letters across the second page of my notes on this film is just the word shit in capital letters underlined. I think I might even take a photo of this on my phone and just upload it to the Facebook page, like when we release this episode, because it is quite funny that that's my review of this film. I've got more notes than that, obviously, but at that point I felt it necessary to write the word shit in massive letters across my notebook, so it's not a great film, let's just say that.
Interestingly, because you love bringing up IMDb, both this and Don't Go in the Woods have a rating of 3.5 out of 10 on IMDb, which are very appropriate in this case. So IMDb is actually right in these cases.
Yeah. Okay. So, who's the director of this magical film, Greg?
Yeah, so this is directed by Lawrence D. Folds, and it has the alternative titles of Curse of the Living Dead, Night Stalker, and Sanctuary for Evil, which are 3 very, very generic titles. I have to say, Don't Go Near the Park is the best title. My kind of key thought of the film was that I have no idea what the fuck is even supposed to be going on in this film, because when it started I thought it was going to be one thing, and then about 20 minutes later it's like, okay, what the fuck is this, what's going on? And then halfway through the film it became something completely different from there. So I was like, okay, did like 8 people write this or something? Because the plot makes no sense. There isn't really a central character, which is a problem, because the narrative is all over the fucking place.
I completely agree with you. The most surprising thing about this film is that it's a cannibal film. And there are 2 writers to this film. I've just checked now. So not 8, just 2. But it's still just...
I may have been exaggerating when I said 8, but...
Feels like 8. Most surprising is that it's a cannibal movie, because I wasn't expecting that in the park. But okay. And... another surprising thing is it's set 12,000 years ago. It's also set 16 years ago, and it's set in the present day. So, yeah, I mean, I was expecting some kind of slasher movie like on Swings and Slides. I don't know about you, but that's how I wanted it to play out. That's what I wanted to happen. I wanted it to be like, it's on the roundabout and someone's getting killed or some shit like that. That's not what happens here.
Yeah, I think that would have been a more interesting film. From the title, I can see why you would have thought that, not zombies and vampires or cannibals or whatever the fuck this is supposed to be about, or God knows.
Cannibals are my personal favourite, and this is a complete spoiler, but fuck it, anyway, I'm going to say it. Laser beams for eyes. Oh my God.
That part was amazing.
That's brilliant.
Jesus Christ.
Never anticipated that being in any of the films that we were going to discuss, and I'm really glad that we got to talk about laser beams for eyes, because it's like so Austin Powers or some crap like that. Laser freaking beams for freaking eyes. Amazing.
And shooting a dog with laser beams as well, which I thought was hilarious. That was probably one of my favourite bits of the film. Just... poor dog getting shot with like some guy using laser beams in his eyes, like you say. Oh dear. Terrible.
So funny. And also that good old technique of putting talc in hair, which we've encountered on one of those films that we talked about before, which is particularly terrible.
It's Blood Feast.
Blood Feast, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, good old talc in the hair. I mean, that's going to make someone look like they're decaying or old, isn't it? Yes. No, it doesn't. It doesn't work.
So the film starts off with, I thought I was watching Star Wars because it had enough kind of like writing on the screen at the beginning, including
the
a very
scrolling text at the beginning. Yeah, although the very first thing you see, and I'm quoting here, it says, "This film is fiction, though it is based on actual occurrences which happened over the centuries." It's like, no, it didn't. Why are you telling me this? Yeah.
So you're telling me there are people who are thousands and thousands of years old. So the story is, and it took me about halfway through the film because they repeated the opening section because it made no sense when it first happened. Yeah. Basically, you've got a couple, and so it starts off 12,000 years ago, and basically they get a curse put on them for some reason, where essentially what happens is every year of their life they age 10 years, and to reverse the aging process they have to basically kill people and eat their guts, I guess. I don't know, that's kind of the impression that I got from the events of the film. And there was something that didn't make any sense where the woman says that the man has to impregnate a woman and have a child for some reason or another so that they can pass the curse on or something like that. I don't know. The story of this film does not make a lot of sense, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, so she can receive eternal life. Just hang on a second. Just got my phone. I was just going to take a picture of my review, which is the word shit, for the page.
Absolutely.
Hope you can hear that. There we go.
Yeah, that's pretty loud, I'm not gonna lie.
Took a photo of that, just especially for the Facebook page. So that's
especially
just about
for you.
Yeah, that sums it up. Yeah, she wants to receive eternal life, and apparently he has to find a woman and have a kid for her to be able to do that. It doesn't make much sense, like you say. But that's where we're going with this film, so okay.
Okay, and so at this point, as I said, it goes from 12,000 years ago to 16 years ago. As I said, there are three timelines in this film. It really doesn't make a lot of sense. So we go from caveman times to just before modern times, and as I said, we have a man and a woman. So the man's name is Mark, and the actor's name in the credits is Crackers Finn, which is an amazing name. Unfortunately, it's not real.
Oh my god!
The actor's name is actually something else. But anyway, so he, what he does is, so basically, essentially, he kind of forces himself on this woman to move into her spare room. It's actually quite creepy. I'm not gonna lie.
It is, yeah, it is really creepy. So he walks in and she screams, and then he gives her this kind of hypnotic look, and he like brainwashes her, and then she like wants to take off her clothes. And again, as a theme with these don't films, it all escalates very quickly. She wants to take off her clothes, and then it cuts to them getting married, and he's obviously been very persuasive, and then it cuts to them having a baby, and then suddenly the child is like 16. And Jesus Christ, like they've just fast forwarded through this kid's life in the film. There's been like no time at all for us to grow up. So
yeah, it's very, very quick to the point where I really wasn't expecting it. I thought the story would be about, the man and the woman. So Mark, and the other woman's name is Patty. So I thought the story was really about them. But yeah, all of a sudden we go from, him marrying this woman who likes getting her clothes off. Now, it's actually not surprising that she likes taking her clothes off, because the actress who plays this character is Linnea Quigley, who's most famous for being in Return of the Living Dead.
Oh, she's on one of the Facebook groups, a horror group that I'm on, and I was plugging the show on there actually, and I noticed that she's in the group and everybody was talking to her, and she's really friendly and nice. So yeah, I really like this actress. She seems so cool.
Yep, so she plays this character who likes, say, taking all the clothes off and being nice to very, very strange, threatening men. So she's basically there to give birth to this child whose name is Bondi, who then basically becomes the main character. And Linnea Quigley is then not really seen for the rest of the film, which is a bit weird. So we then go to, it's basically Bondi's story really from that point, and we're in the present day, and she's 16. That's what they say she is anyway. She's supposed to be 16. And in amongst that, we've got really, really stupid women being killed, which is a theme for a lot of these films. Particularly, there's one particularly stupid blonde woman who's trying to find her dog, who then gets killed by Patty. And Patty kills these people. In fact, you mentioned it's a cannibal film. It's one of those kind of gore effects where it's someone trying to rip open someone's guts, and it's clearly a model. Or in one case, they didn't even bother doing that. They just put a bunch of red paint just on their guts, which looked really shit. I'm not gonna lie.
Noticed that. So yeah, I did track the body count as per usual, and it's 8 deaths, which is a reasonable amount, but yeah, they're not great. I got them. The first one was a boy fishing, which is right at the beginning. There's a blonde girl who she encounters a bear trap in a barn, and then she gets her stomach ripped open by the old woman. And then when Bondi's born, there's a whole series of also stupid deaths after that.
Yeah, although this does include my favourite section in the whole film. So, for her 16th birthday, Bondi is given by her father like this amulet that she wears around her neck, and we don't really think anything of it. It's just, it's just an amulet, fine, fair enough. But then there's a great scene in the film where, and you know exactly what I'm going to say. So, essentially, what happens is this van, which is clearly like a creeper van, pulls up next to Bondi and says, "Hi, do you want to get in my van?" And like an idiot, she says, "Yeah, sure, I'm going to get in your van, sir." And then, obviously, because it's that kind of van with the black tinted windows and all that, they try and, so it's these 3 guys in the van, and 2 of them try to have their way with Bondi, which is, I'm not going to lie, a little bit upsetting. And then what happens is she goes, "Daddy, help me, Daddy, help me." And the amulet starts glowing. Which, okay, this is a turn up for the books. And then what happens is the guy driving the van suddenly goes into this weird trance, and long story short, he ends up driving the van off this bridge, and it then explodes in the way that I mentioned earlier in the show, like a fucking A-bomb had gone off in the van. It just explodes like they had like an actual explosive going on in there. But the best part is that somehow Bondi manages to not be in the van. She has somehow managed to teleport herself away from the van so that she doesn't actually get hurt or anything. It's incredible.
And she's just sat by the side of the road with her blouse kind of unbuttoned, not knowing how she got there, and it's all like happened telepathically, like you say. It is absolutely hilarious and completely unbelievable. But actually, that wasn't my favourite scene. That is pretty high on the list. But my favourite scene was just before that, when he presents the amulet to her for her 16th birthday. They've decided to have a pool party. Oh, it's just so cringy. Like, she's got all her 16-year-old girlfriends round, and they're all in the bikinis sat around the pool. And at this point, you realise that the relationship between her parents is breaking down, and she's becoming more important. And the wife had said before this scene, "Oh, you've got no time for me anymore," to him. And then there's this scene where she gets really jealous of the amulet that Bondi's been given for her birthday. And then out of shot, you just hear them shouting really loud. And she's going, "No, you never gave me gold. Copper for me and gold for her." Like she's really jealous of her own daughter, which is really strange because it's not like, you know, a lover's relationship or something. It's his 16-year-old daughter. And it's so great. I've written down the quote. He's like, "Yeah, that's it, bitch. You said it. She just happens to be better than you. That's it exactly." And all the 16-year-old girls sort of look awkwardly around the pool, and then they all start to leave really quickly, and then Bondi's just sat there with her head in her hands like, "Oh my god, I'm so embarrassed. My parents have argued in front of everybody, and my dad's called her a bitch." And it's just like so cringy. It's just comedy gold. And then you've got the exploding van scene, which is just like our caravan scene in the previous film. It just is ridiculous and just happens so quickly. You're like, where the hell did that come from?
Yeah, it kind of felt like the people who wrote this film were making it up as they go along. And yeah, as I said, it's just absolutely ridiculous scene. Let's say a van explodes into like, you know, a million pieces. Could have taken out like a whole city with the amount of kind of explosive used here. And yeah, Bondi survives.
She survives, but that's death 3, 4, and 5 because I counted 2 guys in the back that were trying to effectively rape her, and the driver.
And then Bondi makes it to the titular park that you're not supposed to go near, which is where kind of the rest of the film kind of takes shape from this point, and this is kind of where the film became somewhat cohesive. So you've got Bondi and this small boy called Nick, who I guess must have been like 7 or 8. He randomly appears, and then they have this really, really creepy scene which basically takes place kind of when they meet. So Bondi, you got to imagine this. So if you're listening to the show, you've not had the pleasure of watching this film like myself and Rhea have. So Bondi is lying down, kind of, you know, wearing all her clothes, and this little boy Nick goes over to her while she's asleep and tries to basically put his hand down her bra.
Yeah.
Which is like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why? When I was 8, I certainly wouldn't try and do that, but oh well.
Yeah, in no uncertain terms, he's a little pervert, and she actually calls him that. Then he kind of asks if he could be a brother, but then he says, "Actually, I don't want to be a brother because I kind of want to do other things." And then she's just like, "What?" She calls him a pervert.
Yeah, so there's some cracking lines. There's some cracking lines in this section. So one of which is like, "Remember, brothers don't go around feeling up their sisters, especially when they're sleeping." And also, Bondi has a great line, "I'm sick of people trying to molest me, even child molesters."
Yeah. Oh God, so
like,
cringe.
Definitely.
Then she meets this hunky man called Cowboy.
Yep, which is that's his name.
I know, and I was like, maybe she's just joking, like, oh, hey, cowboy, trying to be cool. But no, that's
No,
actually
that is
his
his
name.
actual character name in the credits. So they become like almost like a Lost Boys type family. So you've got this really old woman who's Patty again. So then you've got basically this threesome of Bondi and Cowboy and Nick. And basically they're staying in this house in the middle of the park. And then you
you've
get
got the next death.
the next death, yeah.
Oh, death number 6, girl in the park camping. She's got a pink shirt on. And it's an excuse for boobs to be flashed. They rip open a shirt. She's not wearing a bra. Obviously, when you go camping, you just don't wear a bra. I don't know. And then she gets her stomach ripped open as always. I think Mick is watching from the bushes at this point.
And as I said, like the effects in this particular scene were pretty shit. So they didn't even bother using fake insides. They just basically put a bunch of red paint on the girl's stomach. So she's basically like topless, so you can see her boobs, which is is what it is. And so Patty then basically turns back into her normal self, and then we get the ridiculous sort of last sort of 10 or 15 minutes of the film where an all manner of shit happens that I'm not gonna lie, I couldn't really follow. I don't know how.
Well,
I've
tried to follow it, so I'll try to summarize the absolute ridiculousness it is, that scene. So I get it that I take it that Bondi and Nick they go into this cave, and then the guy who is effectively her own dad tries to undress and rape her, kind of.
Yeah, although he tries to get the dog to undress her as well, which I thought was fucking ridiculous.
Oh my god, that's like quote of the year. Okay, I love that. Then everything is set on fire just for a bit of added drama, so the whole cave's on fire. Then laser beams come out of the rise, which is just amazing. Like every film should have that. And then Nick dies, but he's not dead, actually, but I thought he got shot with laser beams and he falls down to the floor. And then there's loads of weird shit that goes on, and I think the two killers, the couple, they get eaten by zombies, from what I can tell.
Although it's not very clear.
Yeah, it's dark and zombie-ish. And then Cowboy, Bondi, and Nick make it out. And then they're kind of like this weird family.
Well, yeah, and then basically right at the end, you've got the weird ending where Bondi basically then starts attacking Nick because, well, she's part of the family. It's the thing that they do somehow. I don't know how that works.
That's the ending. It's like that's the twist in the plot. It's like Nick thinks he's going to just go down the slide. Which is actually what I expected from this film, is that we would be in the play park and it would be some weird deaths related to that. Maybe somebody should remake this film but make it like that, because that would be quite fun. But yeah, it's at the end he goes down the slide and he does this really fake over the top, like, oh my god, she's turned, and she like has blood on her fingers and she's trying to grip his stomach, and it's like you can tell nothing's going to happen. She just like sort of glints at the camera and there's like a bit of a flash in her eyes and it's like, oh, she's turned, she's one of them. It's really dodgy ending and like not convincing at all. Terrible. But hey, we had laser beam for eyes in here, so there's always that.
Yeah, I think all films could be improved by people shooting laser beams out their eyes and zombies. So I Miss You, Hugs and Kisses, you could have had that and you would have probably been more entertaining.
Oh my god, this film was terrible. Okay.
Yeah, this film was really not that great. I mean, I didn't find it boring at all. It was very bad, though. The acting was not very good. The special effects were not very good. The story, as I mentioned earlier, is all over the place. So it just very, very confusing narrative. Very, very difficult to follow up to halfway through the film. A bunch of stuff happens that makes no sense. Very, very confusing. Wasn't really a fan. Not one that I'd want to watch again. And also not a video nasty, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say not a video nasty either.
Yep, pretty cut and dry. Yeah, so, there's one scene, like that scene in the van, but really, that just, I don't know. There's way worse we're going to talk about at some point. It's just, Yeah, I just didn't think that by itself. And yeah, the film is so low budget and cheap that, you really, really can't take any of it seriously because it's all ridiculous, really. And you will be absolutely astounded to hear, I'm sure, that this film is not available in the UK. So alternative means needed for this one. Yes, a pretty rare one. Although I think it's on YouTube, so if you do want to watch it, that's probably your best bet. And then you'll want sort of 80 minutes of your life back, basically.
Maybe just fast forward to the laser beam and zombie scene, which is kind of towards the end. Like, if you want to see what it actually looks like, let's take a look at that.
Yeah, the last 15 minutes are probably, quite entertaining. That and the scene of the guys in the van sort of crashing. That was pretty much, they're the highlights of the film. Everything else you really don't need.
Fair enough. Whew, moving swiftly on.
Yes, so the last film we're going to talk about in our series of films with the theme of, as you can probably guess, don't in the title. And this last one that we're going to talk about, it was my favourite of the three by quite some distance, actually. And this is called Don't Look in the Basement, alternatively known as Death Ward 13 and The Forgotten, which is a slightly better title, actually, in terms of what the film is actually going for story-wise. And this is directed by S.F. Brownrigg, who's an American director. And I've actually seen another one of his films, actually, since watching Don't Look in the Basement. I actually watched a kind of proto-slashery film called Don't Open the Door, which I also enjoyed very much, because I'm going to sort of, again, come out straight away and say I actually quite enjoyed this film quite a lot. So, Ria, what happens in the film and what did you think?
Well, I quite enjoyed this as well. Like you say, I really enjoyed the premise of this film. I think I actually enjoyed watching our first one more, but I felt like the actual premise and the plot of this film was pretty good. I feel like it could actually be remade a lot better now and done quite well, because it's a little bit ropey. But anyway, I'll get on with the summary. So it's a 1973 film, and the plot is a young psychiatric nurse. She goes to work at an asylum called Stevens Sanitarium following a murder, and there she experiences varying degrees of torment from all of the patients. So, I think that this is a great idea for a film, but I do wonder in this day and age would it be PC to do a film like this? Like, is there some kind of opposition or stigma towards anything that's set in a mental institution or to do with mental health? Because obviously back then it wouldn't be challenged, but I'm just wondering if somebody did remake it now, do you think that would be a thing?
Well, it's quite interesting that you bring that up because when I was doing my research for this film, I found out two things. First of all, that this film has a sequel, which only came out a couple of years ago, actually, and it's directed by the son of S.F. Brownrigg. And also that there actually is a remake in the works starring the guitarist of the Misfits.
Oh, this is so awesome, right? Because I've got a friend at the moment, he's called Marios, shout out to Marios. And he's actually on tour with that guy. He's called Doyle. And this guy is he looks so scary. He's built like a brick shithouse. I don't know if you've seen him, but he's awesome. The guitarist from the Misfits. So he's on his solo tour at the moment, and my friend is actually doing sound for him. And he says he's such a great guy. Like, he's such a nice guy, and he's awesome. And if you Google Doyle and look at his image, you'll see why I'm so excited by this, because he would just be perfect for a film, in my opinion. So that's really cool. It's just one of those things where it's like small world,
Definitely. So that's sort of modern sort of versions of this film. In terms of the actual film itself, as I said, I really enjoyed it. Anything's going to kind of look good in comparison to the previous two films we talked about. But I actually thought there was, for a low budget film, I actually thought the acting in this was pretty good. Considering it's the same kind of setup as something like Frozen Scream, where you've got a troupe of kind of stage actors. It's also the setup of the Ghastly Ones, quite interestingly enough. Where you've got a low budget film, sort of a established sort of horror low budget director, and a bunch of actors who aren't used to working in film. But if you don't completely fuck it up, like as in Frozen Scream and the Ghastly Ones, then this is the kind of results you get. Because everyone in this, including like the main character, who is actually played by another former Playboy playmate, but she actually gives a pretty good performance in this film. So I mean, yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, she's really, really pretty lady, isn't she? I enjoyed her performance, and I thought the acting was decent in this film, like you say, and I think the premise of it is great. But yeah, going back to my question about it being like perhaps un-PC these days, how do you think that will go down if they're remaking a sequel to this?
I don't think it's un-PC. I mean, you've got to bear in mind that this film, came after Shock Corridor, the Samuel Fuller film, which is really good and kind of the first sort of well-known sort of exploitation mental asylum film. And actually, interestingly, after this, 2 years later, you actually had One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is kind of the best well-known sort of film set in a mental institution. So, I mean, I don't think people have that much of a problem with it being there. So, in terms of the body count in this, how many did you have?
Yeah, okay, good question. In the end, I got 10. So all of the films in this show we're racking up the kills in this show. All of these films seem to be out and out slashers with a lot of kills in them, so fair play.
Yeah, so now one of the things that is kind of amusing about the film is basically what it's about is you've got this sanatorium where you've got all these patients, and instead of it being like them in rooms or them in sort of solitary confinement or them in straitjackets or anything like that, they're actually allowed to wander around with the doctors and nurses, which doesn't really go very well in this film. So definitely probably like the least well organized sort of sanatorium in film history. Everyone just seems to be able to do what they want, and which is actually quite amusing because someone actually gets killed in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's more like a nursing home, isn't it? Oh, it's amazing, the first kill. So basically, you're introduced to one of the patients, who's this crazy woman with doll babies, and she believes that the dolls are really her children and that they're live babies. So there's that, like, straight off the bat. And then there's this guy outside, and Dr. Stevens, who owns the sanatorium, he's outside with this guy working closely with him. And they seem to think that it's therapeutic for this guy to have an axe and be chopping some wood outside. Which, given his track record, I'm not sure if it's wise to give him sharp objects he might kill with. And he starts hacking away at this wood and then hacks away into Dr. Stevens and kills him. One of the nurses comes out and she just says, "Oh God, how did this happen?" And it's like, well, really, you trusted him with an axe, and he's got a track record of mental illness and extreme behaviour. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in there. So there we have it. The first death is actually Dr. Stevens, delivered by the judge with an axe.
Yeah, now interestingly, as I mentioned, I've seen a second film by the director called Don't Open the Door. Now, the actor who plays Judge, he is also in Don't Open the Door, playing a character called Judge, weirdly enough. So, weird little synchronicity there in terms of films made by the same director. Yeah, definitely. I also thought it was quite amusing as I was watching this, this is probably the second most unsafe sort of mental asylum that I've seen in a film. There's a giallo called Slaughter Hotel, which is directed by Fernando De Leo, which is basically it's about this mental asylum where they just have these medieval kind of weapons just on the wall, just generally like an Iron Maiden or like a flail. They're just there, just scattered around. So it's only the second most kind of dangerous asylum to work in, although there's less fraternizing between patients and doctors in this one.
Oh God, yeah. And it seems like some of the patients are named in there after their previous profession before they were admitted to the care home. So Judge, that's not actually his real name, but I'm assuming that he was a judge before he went in there. And you've also got Sergeant, who was previously a sergeant. So
Yeah.
there is that kind of odd, it's like they've retired, but they've gone into the mental institution and they've carried on with their role because in their mind, that's what they're still doing. So,
Yes. So you've got, say, the various sort of patient characters. So yes, you've got Judge and you've got Sergeant, as we said. So you've got Harriet, who's the woman with the fake baby.
oh yeah, the fake bit. So it's quite cliche. So a lot of their lines will be centered around what their role was. So I think the judge says like a few things about the verdict being guilty and stuff like that. And the sergeant probably says a few things that are quite sort of military based as well. But yeah, you've got your crazy doll lady and those two characters.
Yes, and then you've got your stereotypical nymphomaniac character, which you get in all these kind of exploitation sort of asylum films, and her name is Alison. So she's basically a big old nympho. And then you've got a character called Jennifer, who is your kind of withdrawn sort of female character who may be dependent on drugs. And you've got a character called Danny, who's sort of a younger sort of guy with like an afro who is very childlike and kind of, but it can go very, very delirious very, very quickly. And you've got your main patient who's called Sam, who's this huge black guy who was lobotomized by Dr. Stevens. And he kind of believes that Dr. Stevens is still talking to him and things like that.
Yeah, but then you've also got Mrs. Callingham, who's the old lady who believes that flowers are her children and she's named them, which I found quite amusing. And she sort of recites these rhymes which are quite sort of like sort of prophetish. So she's like the prophet of doom, you know, like the prophecy, where she's like warning people to get out and never come back. And she can't go outside. Something to do with fear of little men. There's like a little rhyme. It's very sort of Willy Wonka-ish, you know, from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the original Gene Wilder film, when he's on the boat and he's like chanting. It's a bit like that.
So again, we've compared an exploitation film to Willy Wonka. Another amazing comparison to be made on this show.
I'm just looking now to see what the old lady, Mrs. Callingham, named her flowers, because that really got me. I thought it was really funny. I think it's like Alan and something.
That's not a very flowery name. Alan, that's a bit shit, really, isn't it?
I really wish I could find it. I'll find that whilst we're talking about it.
Yeah, so Mr. Callingham is kind of in that way you get in slasher films, like Friday the 13th being the most obvious one. We've got an old character who's a bit crazy who goes, oh, you're all doomed, you know, you've got to leave this place straight away. And they're like, yeah, whatever, old motherfucker, go away. Like,
yeah,
but no,
I found it. It's Bobby and Alan, so those are children's names. Flowers.
Oh dear. So that's your kind of cast of inmate characters, and yes, you've got a doctor called Dr. Masters, who after Dr. Stevens is killed, takes over the asylum and is basically running it. And there is another doctor who, like Dr. Stevens, doesn't last very long in the film.
Yeah, so first death is Dr. Stevens. Like you say, you've got Masters, who's like she's like the matron. She's like an old matron. There's another older nurse who is choked as the second death. She's got like winged glasses on. She's choked by the crazy doll woman and possibly put in a suitcase, which is what I think happened. I'm not sure. So those first two deaths happen, and then our pretty young nurse arrives,
whose name is Charlotte. And yeah, basically, so she kind of has been told that she's already kind of joining the company, and Dr. Masters doesn't immediately accept her right away, but because it's a film, she just does, basically. And then there's a lot of kind of, because one of the things I liked about this film is, unlike kind of the previous two films that we talked about, there is actually a lot of character development in the film itself. So, for example, instead of admittedly, a lot of it, as you said, is to do mainly with kind of what they used to do, or like this one character trait that they have. Although a couple of them I actually did really like the performances, like Judge, I thought was a really good, intense performance. I thought the actor who played Sam was really good. And I thought that and you say a lot of the performances, even though they are kind of bordering on the kind of hysterical, were actually very effective in a film like this. And yeah, you have a lot of scenes where you're kind of getting to know the different characters, and because they're crazy and it's in that kind of environment, you do have that sense that anything could happen at any time, which I thought worked quite well in this film.
It is good, actually. It is good, but I do see how it's been put together a little shoddily and it could be done better. But like I say, it is enjoyable. You are right. Like, I enjoyed... I was always waiting to see what would happen next, and there is this element of crazy, which is really interesting throughout.
Yeah, absolutely. So, they are the only characters really in the film, although there is another character who appears, who is a telephone repairman, who just randomly appears in the film because the telephone stops working. And I'm not quite sure how the company would know that the phone stopped working, but hey, I guess they did. So they send this telephone repairman, and there doesn't appear to be a reception at this sanatorium. So he doesn't know who he's talking to, if he's talking to patients or doctors. So yeah, not really a very well organised mental institution there. And then he kind of meets, long story short, he kind of meets the nymphomaniac.
She called Alison, the nympho. It's a brilliant scene. I really enjoyed this scene. He says something along the lines of, ripe strawberries are the colour of blood. And then she says, I do taste like strawberry. And then she says, taste me! And she like rips off her dress, and she's got no bra underneath conveniently yet again, as always happens in horror films. So she's just like completely naked, just like rips off her dress. And she's like, I can be anything you want. And he says, to be carnally minded is death. And he's basically calling her a slut. So he's like refusing her advances, and she's just like, I just want to be loved because then that'll make me feel better. And she's just like, take me. And she does that quite a lot through the film, which is really entertaining.
Yeah, she's another very entertaining character in the film. And then, so you've got various sort of threatening scenes in the film. Like, the main character, Charlotte, is attacked by Jennifer with a knife. I think earlier in the film she makes a mistake of saying something, like, bad about Jennifer, and she doesn't forget, so she attacks her with a knife. And then
there we go again with Jennifer. Like, when they first introduce her as, like, the withdrawn girl, she's, like, down on the floor next to the matron Masters, sat by her chair, and she looks incredibly like somebody from The Grudge or The Ring, with like the dark hair just sort of stringy all over her face. And what the hell is she doing down on the floor next to the chair? Like, I just totally picked up on that straight away and was just like, this is very much like The Ring. Very creepy. I liked that. I like that character. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then you've got another scene which is very similar, where you've got Judge and Danny who kind of wake up Charlotte in the middle of the night, and they basically scare her because, as I said, like, you're not allowed to close the doors, so anyone could just wander in while you were asleep. So I thought that was quite threatening, and that worked quite well, I thought.
Yeah, that was threatening. I've got a note on this. The two of them in her room at night, and I was like, oh, kind of used to live, I don't know if I told you about this, but I used to live with a guy like that, a weird landlord that did that to me once, and it reminded me of that, and I was like, oh my god, dark times, very creepy.
Yeah, this is why it's important to have locks on your doors, everyone.
After that, I swiftly got a lock fitted to the door, let's just say that.
Yeah, it sounds like you did the right thing there. Because, as this film shows, like, if anyone could wander in, especially when you've got a guy with a penchant for axes, shall we say, definitely a good idea to put a lock on your door. Also, another scene that happens in this film that I thought, I wouldn't say it was cool or anything, but it was quite noteworthy, is you've got Dr. Masters punishes Sergeant by burning a piece of paper in his hand and letting it just burn in his hand, which I thought was pretty cruel, to be honest.
Yeah, that was really weird. I couldn't figure out what was going on in that scene. But
there was something written on the paper, I think, that she objected to. But I've got to be honest, the quality of the film, because it's low budget, you couldn't really see what he'd written. But I assume she didn't like it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think so. And so then we've got the fantastic part where Mrs. Callingham, she gets her tongue cut out and she's found. She survives, but she's had her tongue cut out, so there's all blood coming out of her mouth. And then after that, she can't be the prophecy anymore because you can't distinguish what she's saying, but she's still doing it. And then Sam is translating because he seems to understand exactly what she's saying, even though she's got no tongue, which is really odd.
Yeah, it's very, very odd.
So this is quite a creepy bit. So she survives, but we don't know who's cut out her tongue, so it's just a bit weird. And she obviously can't really say because no one can understand what she's saying.
No, although, and this is the big spoiler of the film, dun dun dun, although it's not obvious, it is implied that it's Dr. Masters, because the big secret of the film is that Dr. Masters is actually a patient who is pretending to be a doctor because she went to medical school and something happened and she couldn't be a professional doctor, so she's basically lost her shit, as they say. And so since Dr. Stevens has died, she's basically now sort of taken over the asylum, but all the other patients know that she's actually a patient as well. So and she does play unhinged quite well, I've got to say. The actress who plays Dr. Masters.
I really loved that twist in it. I thought that was very clever, and it just puts a lot of doubt into Charlotte's mind, because there's this kind of back and forth between her trying to control the situation and Charlotte not being sure if she should be there. So that was really clever. I really liked that, which is why I say this would be great if it was remade like properly, because it is such a ropey sort of thrown together film, but the premise of it is excellent, like you say.
Although if it was remade, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have the scene of implied necrophilia which happens near the end of this film.
Oh God, yeah, that is really creepy though. So, in terms of, let's build up to that with our deaths. So, after the tongue's been cut out, death number 3 is Jennifer. She goes to get her meds and she gets a spike in the eye, which is quite a good one. And then death number 4 is our telephone man is found, which is Alison's lover man. And it's believed at this point that Masters, the matron, has killed him, and that's how we sort of find out this whole backstory and this whole twist in the plot. And then after that, the patients actually then, because they realise what's going on, they turn on Masters. So all the patients kill Masters.
Yeah, and this is where the title Don't Look in the Basement comes from, because basically, as you can probably guess with a title like that, Dr. Stevens, although he is kind of half dead, he is in the basement, and Charlotte basically finds him there kind of half alive, not really able to sort of say a lot. And then at this point she kind of thinks, yeah, you know what, this job isn't really for me, so I'm going to leave now, although obviously they don't want her to leave, but basically Sam, because he had this lobotomy, so Dr. Masters unfortunately manages to trigger Sam, and then Sam basically goes completely mental.
So death number 6, Sam kills the judge with an axe because he goes off on one, and then he kills the rest of the patients in the room that have all killed Masters, so he turns on them all. So then it's death 7, 8, 9 and 10, which I believe is Alison, our nympho, Sergeant, Danny, which is the crazy guy who goes like really over the top, and who's the last one?
It's Harriet.
Oh, Harriet, yeah.
Yeah, so you got Harriet as well.
It out. Yeah, and then so Harriet dies. So in total, that is 10 deaths. That's that. And then Charlotte actually gets out.
Yeah, and I actually say, for all the endings that I've kind of complained about on this show, I actually quite like the ending of this film, because you've got Charlotte, she's escaped, she's been saved, and Sam is basically the only character left in the film, and the film ends with him sort of sat in a kitchen crying, eating an ice lolly, which is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool way to end the film, because you don't know what's going to happen at that point, which then obviously led to the sequel, but I've not seen the sequel. I don't know what happens in it.
I'm now really looking forward to this remake, whatever it is, so I'll be keeping my eyes skimmed for that. But yeah, overall, really liked the plot and the plot twist and the ending for this film, and I liked the crazy elements and the characters. yeah, is good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it just kind of shows what you can do with low budget filmmaking because, this clearly wasn't made on a very big budget at all, as you can tell by the graininess of the footage. And yeah, the acting, I mean, it's the 70s, so I mean, I'm biased because the 70s is my favourite decade in film history, so I like kind of the raw, kind of unpolished nature of the performances. I think the film, for its low budget, is actually shot really well. I think, everything looks really kind of cool. There's a scene with blue lighting in it that I really liked, and yeah, I mean, it's not like the greatest film I've ever seen in my life or anything like that, but I think for what it was, for what it's going for, I thought it was very effective, and it's definitely a film that I would recommend. I mean, it might not be for everyone's taste because some reviews I've read of it say it's a bit slow, which, I mean, I don't mind. I mean, if you watch like Tarkovsky or something like that, this doesn't seem slow, or Antonioni, or like any kind of giant art house films. I do love those films, but it's an acquired taste, especially if you're used to modern pacing. But yeah, if you're willing to look past that and you're willing to invest in the characters, it's definitely worthwhile, I think.
Yeah, the crazy standout necrophilia bit that you mentioned is our nympho Alison. She got the dead body of the telephone repairman. She puts him in a bed, even though he's like and truly dead by then, like he's been gone for a while, he's covered in blood. She puts him in a bed, and then Charlotte opens the door. It's all a bit like I felt like this was a bit The Shining, the way it's done, because it is that crazy and like random. But she opens the door and she's like looking right at her, and she looks like she's about to make love to this dead body, and like obviously been kissing him because she's got like blood all over her face. And she goes, "Oh, you shouldn't interrupt us on our wedding night." And is just like looking really seductively at the dead body. And it's really creepy. So that was like probably one of the most surprising and shocking parts of the film, as you mentioned.
Yeah, definitely. So, is this a video nasty?
No, I'm going to say no. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I agree. Again, and this is the third no on the show, there isn't really anything salacious in this whatsoever. It's a little bit violent, but, compared to some of the other films on the list, not as much as those. There's a little bit of nudity, but there's nothing nothing really
stands out.
No, there's not. Again, I'm not really sure why this was on the list in the first place. Although in America, this was actually released by the same company who released Last House on the Left, so maybe it was linked to that, or maybe the BBFC just don't like films with the word "don't" in the title, whereas we love them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. The three, I would say this is the best of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's the best quality-wise. I think the first one is the funniest if you're going to go for bad good, but this is actually, in premise, this is the best film and the best plot.
Yes, absolutely. And this is available in the UK. It's available from a company called Stax Entertainment Limited on DVD. So if you want to check it out on DVD, that's the way to do it. Again, it's also on YouTube. So if you want to watch it, it's worthwhile, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of our show, and again, the time just seems to fly by when we're talking about these Video Nasties films. Thank you very much for listening to the show. If you're listening to us on iTunes or if you're listening to us on YouTube, if you want, please subscribe to us on any of those pages, or you can subscribe to us on our Facebook page, or you can follow us on Twitter at Lament Horror.
Yeah, excellent. So I've been Reoffend once again. Alternative model and actress. You can find me on Facebook on my puppet page, Reoffend. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram, Ria_Fend. I've actually got a few shout outs this time as well. So once again, shout out to Marios Sozos, sound guy for Doyle, who I've mentioned in the show when we talked about the remake for the movie that we just spoke about. Big thanks to Mikey Whiplash for the Instagram mention, who listens to the show. He's a UK-based professional wrestler. Check out his work on YouTube. And a shout out to Lee Beat and the Beat family from Birmingham, who are big fans of the show. thanks for listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone, I want to thank everyone for listening, but yes, thank you for those guys in particular. They've listened to every single show that we've done, so I'm very happy to give them a shout out. I also, as we're doing shout outs, I want to give a shout out to my good friend, Mr. Thomas Cannon, my best friend in the whole world, who has also listened to every single show that we've done. He's a big fan, and I want to thank him very much for doing that, because I really appreciate it. One of my friends called Tom, of which there are many.
Oh yeah, well, we want to give a shout out to Thomas Dennett Cook as well, who I ran into on Sunday, and he's a fan of the show, and it's because of him that we actually met and started doing the show. So thank you, Thomas Dennett Cook, as well.
Yes, thank you, Thomas Dennett Cook, because you're a great man and you do good work, and look forward to working with you in the future, as I'm sure Rhea is.
Just a little bit of a teaser. We are actually planning a mid-year 2017 horror film review, and we've been watching some of the films that have been coming out this year so far in build up to that. So stay tuned and look out for that special, because it'll be different to our usual video nasty reviews, just for that one show. And I'm very much looking forward to reviewing those films that I've watched so far.
Yes, so we don't only watch video nasties. Anyone who listened to our first show, who kind of maybe wants us to review more modern films, well, hey, the next show is going to be the one that you want to listen to, because me and Rhea, we've been studiously keeping up to date with the films released in UK cinemas this year, and on the next show we're going to talk about the best and indeed the worst of horror in 2017. So I'm very much looking forward to doing that one. Slight change of pace, but don't worry, the video nasties will be back on the next show after that one. Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you again in 2 weeks' time. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.